You're getting some of the greatest entertainment you'd ever get. Listen to the double axe handle smash. You're not going to beat it anywhere. It's Col Parker. Take it from me. I'm always right.
You're listening to Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast with your hosts, two guys you've never heard of. And now, the man who has more free activities in a week than work hours, Metal Ed. And the man who has no time for passive-aggressive behavior, hint, hint, Johnny O.
Welcome to the lucky 13th episode of Double Axe Handle Smash. I am Johnny O.
And yo soy el Metal Edwin.
And what's that mean?
I am El Metal Edwin, as they call me in my father's homeland of Puerto Rico.
Wow, have you ever been there?
Once in utero.
Oh, so when was that?
1980. In utero.
Ah, in the uterus.
Yes.
Oh.
I used a big word. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset your brain there. So, Johnny, why don't you hit him with the deets of today's special guest?
Our special guest today is Col Rob Parker. In WCW, he managed such teams as Harlem Heat, and he had the Stud Stable. And do you remember who he managed in WCW as well?
Well, let's see. I remember Harlem Heat. I remember him coming out with them on Change, which was a bad idea. Very bad idea.
Do you remember he managed Stunning Steve Austin?
Stunning Steve. I remember he also was with Jacques and Pierre, the Quebecers, at one point as Le Col Rob Parker.
The Amazing French Canadians.
Yes. Well, so that's right. They weren't the Quebecers. They were right. But they're the Quebecers to me, damn it.
They're always the Quebecers to me as well.
Yeah.
So he had a very storied career before he was a manager in WCW. A lot of people don't know, but he was actually a championship-winning professional wrestler himself.
Down in the Tennessee area, hence the Tennessee Lee name, right?
Yeah, Tennessee Lee when he was in WWE as a manager of Jeff Jarrett.
And Southern Justice.
Yeah, great tag team.
Mm-hmm. Mark Canterbury and Dennis Knight.
Yeah,
couple of good the guys were good.
I'd love to have those guys on our show.
Yeah, either one or both would be great. So if you're listening, guys, hit us up.
Hit us up on the Twitter.
You can follow us on Twitter at DAH_Smash. And if you follow us and give us a like, we'll give you a follow back. We're on Facebook at Double Axe Handle Smash. You can go to the website, dahsmash.com. We're on all your favorite providers. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio. We are on Google Podcasts. We're on Stitcher. We're on Deezer if you're listening abroad. Anywhere, mostly, that you can get your favorite podcast, you can find us. Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast.
So another thing about Col Rob Parker is he's a pretty tall guy, too. I think he's like 6'5".
I don't know. I've never looked at him in person, but he sure seems tall.
Yeah, well, I mean, looked up his deets on the ever-trusting Wikipedia.
Right. I mean, this guy got to work with not just good wrestlers, but good managers. He got to work with Sherry Martel.
Yep. He got to work with Jerry the King Lawler and Jerry Jarrett.
Jerry Jarrett, yeah. He's been around the block, man. So stay tuned. This is a very, very interesting episode. Col Rob Parker is a treasure.
And the rib stories are amazing, especially one of the Andre the Giant.
Oh, no, man. My favorite was Haku. Listen to what he talks about Haku, or Meng, however you want to call him.
The baddest man on the planet is Haku.
Yes.
Still to this day.
To this day, you don't want to mess with Haku, but you still got to hear the stories. So,
without further ado, Col Robert Parker, also known as Robert Fuller. Welcome to Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast. We have a very special guest here tonight. We have Col Rob Parker, a.k.a. Robert Fuller.
Yes, sir. Glad to be with you, my man.
So, you were a wrestler for many years before people got to know you nationally with the WCW as Col Rob Parker. Can you tell us about your past, about your training, how you got into the business?
Well, I got into the business. My whole family, my grandfather, Roy Welch, and his three brothers, Lester, Herb, and Jack, and then my father was a wrestler, Buddy Fuller. And he owned many territories. He ran the Gulf Coast Wrestling back in the 50s, and then was a promoter along with Les Wolf in Memphis, Tennessee. And then we went out to Arizona, and Dad opened up Arizona, and we wound up living there and working for a while, and then we wound up in Atlanta with Ray Gunkel and my father were the owners of Georgia Championship Wrestling. And later on, then Dad traded his cousin Lester for Florida, part of a Florida territory with Eddie Graham down here, and then Lester went and took over Georgia with Dad, and then later after that, Ray Gunkel died, and all kinds of things happened in Georgia, and that thing just kind of went crazy, and wound up later on being WCW, and it was, and I just kind of took the ride. That I started wrestling back in the early 70s. I graduated from school in '69, and we were sitting at the breakfast table, and my father said, hey, he said, you're booked. It's like 2 weeks later in Tennessee. He said, you got 5 bookings, and you're going to be working Humboldt, Tennessee, and Dyersburg, Tennessee, and Carruthersville, Arkansas, across the Mississippi River there, and Blytheville for your Uncle Herb, and then you're going to be in Jackson, and then you're going to finish up in Memphis with the big show. That was where I was really going to get some experience in these small towns, and then 5 days later I was going to be working in Memphis. So it kind of was stunning to me that I had been training. I'd been a wrestler in high school and been a Georgia state champion when I wrestled in high school, and then was trained by Corsica Gene, the Corsica brothers, Gene and Joe. And so, but you're never ready. As a young guy, just got out of school. I was 19 years old, and I just thought, you ought to give me a couple of years training and all of this stuff. He was like, no, you're booked, and that means, when you're booked, you go make the show, you're a wrestler. And so that it just kind of jumped on me, and so I started my career there, working in Georgia, and I would work 2-3 days a week, and for him and Ray Gunkel. And but I know growing up in my life, I got to tell you guys that my favorite thing to do in life was to go to the wrestling matches, and I saw my family a lot there. Lester was always around Dad and my uncle Lester Welch, and I watched my grandfather work as a small boy. Roy, I saw a few matches by him, and I was always very excited about getting a chance to go to the wrestling match. So this was I was kind of cut out for it and raised for it all my life.
Now, did you always have a natural charisma, or was that something you had to hone over time? Can you kind of explain to us how you honed your skills on the microphone?
Not really. My dad always said you're full of crap. And so that's it's easy because I talked all the time anyway, whether I knew what I was talking about or not. And Dad'd say, "Oh gosh, that guy never can shut him up," and all of that stuff. But when I got in the business, I had a lot of experience by guys like Sputnik Monroe that interviewed so well that I called him Uncle Sputs because he was around our house. He worked for my dad, all the time I can remember from when I was a small child, and guys that really spoke well on TV, and so I had an understanding of that. And so when I left Georgia to come down here to Florida for Eddie and work for a while, and you came in here. Florida was the place at that time. Eddie Graham ran the place, and everything was done. I mean, it was a very stiff place to work. If you follow me by stiff, it was the guys trained in what they call a snake pit, and they'd go down there and they'd shoot. They wouldn't wrestle. They would go in there and they'd shoot with one another. And it was a place for learning. And so I came Ronnie Garvin on Tuesday nights in Fort Myers. They worked a little armory show there, and on Tuesday night Tampa ran, so it was the big show was in Tampa at Fort Esterly. So they had me and Ronnie Garvin working the main event, and as Buddy Fuller's son, I got over pretty quickly and down in Fort Myers, and so I had to cut interviews for it, and I remember looking forward to those interviews. There were a lot of guys are scared about doing their interview that I actually looked forward to it because I'd always give it a great deal of thought during the week before I would get there to do my interview. And I have to tell you this, not to just keep going on, but later in my career as doing Colonel Parker, I had guys, I'll say Dustin Rhodes because this is one that I remember, and they'd come to me and say, "Oh, Colonel, I don't know what to say on this interview. Can you give me an idea of what to say?" And I was always complexed by that because I was like, you have an angle with this guy you're working, whether it's Bunkhouse Buck or who it is, and you haven't thought about it. And he's like, well, I've been thinking about it here the last few minutes. I'm like, well, you might have thought about it 5 days ago and spent 5 days working on it. That nobody just walks in, in this business. I know in New York now they write your stuff, and a lot of times you just read your lines, but we weren't, I wasn't raised like that, and the business wasn't that way. They just come in and tell you who you're wrestling, what the match involves, and then you chase that idea around of how you're going to present that and try to draw money with it. So I always try to get a thought about it. When I was a young guy working with Ronnie Garvin, who's an older guy, and he was well respected in the area here and on TV and so forth. And so I made the interview like, hey, you said that that I should be working at the service station washing windows on cars and pumping gas. I got no business being in the ring with you. I'm a young pup that don't know anything, and I put all those thoughts in my mind, and then I would start to do that interview, and I'd get mad, because I'm like, hey, can you say all those things about me when the realities are, I'm a state champion, and I'm raised by a wrestling family, and I'll tell you this, I've worked at a service station, and I washed windows on the cars and pumped more gas, and I was, I did a darn good job at it, and there's nothing I've ever done in my life I didn't do a good job at, and that's going to be your problem come Tuesday night, because I'm going to kick your butt. You're going to be darn surprised you don't have a 10-cent little boy in here you're wrestling. You got a man that you're underestimating. And it was easy for me to, for some reason or other, to get angry about him saying things about me that belittled me, and then I didn't have a problem with that, with interviews, and I would seize on that. When I was doing Colonel Parker, I lived in a apartment in Atlanta where the pools were out in the back and you could see the poolside. And some people thought I was crazy because they would see me walking up and down the fence by the poolside there talking to myself. And I did, because Colonel Parker was a difficult animal for me, because it was a colonel, and the colonel language, the colonel approach to things. I'd read a Mark Twain book, and then I would try to get ideas and things that I could say in regards to being a colonel. And so I would go out and I'd march up and down, and I'd play that part in my mind 1,000 different ways. And when I got down there to do interviews, I wasn't scared of being there and not being able to perform well. I was really looking forward to it because I was well prepared. And so they didn't have to bring me a script to tell me what to do or anything, because they knew that, hey, if I've got Rob in here, he's going to be well prepared for this interview. And so, heck, I'd knock out 20 of them, and take because I'm ready for it. I've worked all week long on it, and that's what guys today, if they if they're reading lines, then God bless them. But but if you're left to just like the old days when I was booking, to just tell a guy this is what I want and this is the kind of approach you should have at it, and then say let's cut it. And if I don't like it, then hey, cut. Hey, this hey, let's change that, do this. But I'm certainly not going to give you the exact lines that you say. That's got to come from you. And so anyway, a guy that does that well, then you can bet puts a great deal of time into it.
Yeah, right. So let me ask you this. You mentioned shooters earlier. In all your travels during the territory days, did you ever meet Stu Hart? Did you ever go to Stampede?
No, I didn't. I knew Stu Hart. I've known him because in high school, my father took us every year to Las Vegas to the NWA meetings, and that Stu Hart was always there. And so I'd heard him speak, and I had been around him. He was somewhat of a character, man. I mean, he was outrageous, and a funny guy to be around. And my brother's got 1,000 stories about him. He knows him better than I do, and he'll mimic him. He'll talk about things that he said, and he sounds just like him. It's very funny, but he was quite a character.
His voice is the most duplicated in all wrestling.
Yeah. I guess, like him, guys like Jim Barnett and him and a few that...
Dusty.
Yeah. Dusty. Exactly. Dusty.
Yeah.
Dusty, I'd tell you a quick story about Dusty. When I went to Atlanta to do Colonel Parker, the first night that I was there, they came to me in the dressing room and they handed me a script. And I'll be honest with you, I've never been handed a script, and it was things that Colonel Parker would say on the interview, and I was pretty much supposed to read it by verbatim, or just exactly like it was handed to me, and so I had thought about the interview that I was going to make for 3 weeks because I knew I was going in, and so I took that script and I went down to Dusty, was the booker, the main booker, and I knocked on his door, and Dusty, come on in. I went in and I explained to him the situation. I said, I kind of got prepared for this stuff, but I said, they've handed me a script. And he said, oh yeah, baby. He said, down here, that's what they do. They come in here and they write everything for all the boys, and then the boys, and if the boys don't say what they write and all, then naturally it makes the writers mad, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of the writer. He said, so maybe you just want to go ahead and just read the script and do the best you can with it. And I said, well, I've got some good stuff. And he said, give me what you got. And so I just lead the interview on him right there that I had come with.
Right.
And he looked at me kind of with a grin on his face. He said, throw that shit in the garbage. He said, throw that shit in the garbage. And so I did. And then they didn't write my stuff anymore.
Yep.
And I guess I didn't have any problem with the writers, but I had the same thing when I went to New York with Jeff Jarrett. And I was up there doing Tennessee League. That I went in there, and the first day that I was there, the head guy, he was Jeff's buddy. Gosh,
Vince Russo.
The
Yeah.
guy. So me and Jeff is sitting down there, and he's writing stuff down on the thing. And Jeff says, "What you doing?" And he said, "I'm writing up Colonel stuff." And he said, "Don't do it." I didn't say it. Jeff did. Jeff said, "Don't do it. Don't do it." He said, "No." He said, "You don't have to write his stuff. Just," he said, "He's already got it. He's already got it." And Russo said, "Is that right?" I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "We've already thought about this." And he said, "Oh, well, goodness. well, gosh, all right, you're fine. I said, yeah, I'm fine. Jeff said, don't ever write his stuff.
That is the best story.
Yeah, they didn't write my stuff up there either. They did, they just tell me roughly who we were against and what they wanted, and and then I knew the scoop of how I wanted to present Jeff, the greatest wrestler, the greatest dancer, the greatest singer, the greatest star of all, and so it was easy to do the job.
Now, had you already met Jeff when you went to work for his father, Jerry Jarrett, down in CWA?
Yeah, then I had when I went in the 80s, I went in, Jeff was he was a kid. I mean, he was just real young and small. He didn't have a lot of size to him, and Jerry was using him really well. And the reason he was doing it is, Jeff had that Lancelot look, that hair, Lancelot, and he could sell like a son of a gun, the natural blonde hair down to his shoulders, and really good looking boy. And they were having a hard time getting cooperation out of guys to work with him, and so I've known Jerry Jarrett since the early 70s, and he knew me real well, and so he just talked to me. He said, "Hey, I want to work you in the kid," which meant I was going to spend 6 months in an angle with Jeff. As a heel, I did everything to him. I broke his arm, and I did thing, and he blew. There was 100 angles every week. It was something on TV, big between me and Jeff, and so I kind of cut Jeff's teeth on how to really work this business. I'd call the matches. I made awful interviews about him. I mean, really bad stuff that I'd give a lot of thought to bury him on the interview, and then I would go and talk to him before the TV and let him know that I'm going to really bury you here now, and you need to do some thinking about your rebuttal, what you're going to say to come back, how you're going to say it, because that's where the money's at. That I'm the biggest jerk that ever walked in the ring, and I'm going to prove it. And you're going to need to get off your horse here and really make a good interview to answer me. And I would trade him off a few ideas, but it's all up to him. It's the same thing that I had when I was young. He had listened to my interview and be upset by it, mad about it, and then show that when on his interview. I had it with a lot of guys. Even guys like Reed Steamboat. He and I had great matches together. Worked there in Mid-Atlantic, and I said awful things about him, and he'd ask me a few times. He would say, "Well, why do you have to go that far?" He was kind of upset, kind of perturbed by it. And here's a guy that's the ultimate professional. And, I just look at him with a smile, just like, good gosh, I'm a bad guy. I'd say terrible things about people that I have no decency about me whatsoever, and because I'm a bad guy. And so you have to be ready to answer that, to let the people know what a jerk, what a goof, what a sorry son of a gun I am, and what you plan to do to me, and how you're going to stand up to what I said about you.
Right, then it becomes entertainment because then you're going back and forth, correct?
Yeah, that you need that. You need that. I had it with Jerry Lawler when I was a babyface working in Memphis, and I had a program with Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler went in on Memphis TV, and he made an interview that I despised him. I mean, I honestly got mad at him, and I couldn't wait to get out to the microphone because I wanted to explode there and just let the people know that this guy is a friggin' goof jerk. He's never been in the gym. He doesn't know crap about wrestling. And I'm looking forward. I'm not going to sleep till Monday night. I'm going to kill his ass when I get in there. Then I really dislike this guy. And it was hard. He was such a good interviewer, and he came up with some of it's funny sarcasm, the awful things, and And when I got in the ring, I even took that to the ring with me a little bit. That I would crowd him some in the corners. He didn't like it. You know, the pressure. He wanted to settle down, let me call the match, feel more comfortable. And I was like, well, you know what? How about feeling comfortable about this? You know, I'm all over you, you know. But the people notice that. You know, they notice it. What you need in the business. And in my young days in wrestling, my father instilled that, and my brother and I, that's the same thing. I know his dad put in him, that we were serious about our business. You know, just darn serious about our business, and so we took that to every show with us.
So, before we get to the Rob Parker character, your brother Ron Fuller had a stable called the Stud Stable. And
so did I.
Yeah. So there was many iterations of it, and a lot of different people. I mean, your cousin, Bunkhouse Buck, Jimmy Golden, Sid Vicious, Cactus Jack, Dutch Mantell, Brickhouse Brown, I mean, Brian Lee, everybody, a whole bunch of people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A lot of good guys.
Well, just real quick, talk about the Stud Stable. Not the one in WCW, but the one before WCW.
Yeah. Well, that all came about in with Jarrett. Actually, you know, my brother and I, we owned Alabama for wrestling rights. So everything from Huntsville to Mobile and all the way over to Tallahassee there in northwest Florida, that was all our territory, and it was called Continental Wrestling. And we worked that stable thing there. My brother was kind of Tennessee stud, and he went with that. And then later on, Ron quit and started and went to hockey business, and I took over that Tennessee stud stuff. And then in Memphis, when I was doing this angle with Jeff, where Jeff was a real young boy, and I was working with him all the time, that Jerry wanted me to have a stable and work with a lot of guys there and do their talking. And so, you know, that worked fine for me, and so I ran a stud stable in there. Like you say, Cactus Jack was one of my main guys, and we worked there in Memphis territory, which is Nashville and Louisville and over to Lexington, and, you know, it's awful big territory in there. And then we also went to Texas a lot for the Von Erichs. So we took the stud stable over there, worked with the Von Erichs, and did real good with the stable act. When I got to WCW, then they wanted to do that right away. They wanted to start the stable and get the same type of deal going.
Speaking of WCW, what led you to seek employment there? Who brought you in, and who came up with the concept of Colonel Rob Parker?
Well, I did a little bit of a long story, but not too much. The person who did that for me was Sid Udi, which was Psycho Sid. And what happened is, when I was running my territory down in Alabama, I had this guy downtown Bruno from up in Pittsburgh, and he's sending me pictures of him and different guys and wanting to manage in my territory. And I told him, you know, we had managers, we didn't need anybody. But in order just to get him off my back, I told him, send me a picture of a dreadnought, somebody awful, something outrageous, and maybe I'll give you a break. And I just never expected to get anything, but he would send me all these pictures, and all of a sudden he sends me this picture, and it's him and Sid, but Sid in a Lord Humongous outfit. And I looked at that picture and I said, oh my gosh. So then, you know, I called him and said, hey, what about this guy and everything? And so it was Sid. He was living up there in West Memphis, and I'd worked a little bit for Jarrett, but didn't have much experience in the business. But he just looked unreal, and so I hired him to come in, and I got Sid started in the business, really got him started good. And then when I went back up for Jarrett, and I made sure Sid went up to be in my stable also, and kind of helped Sid along with his career. And so I was working for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I'd do 4 days for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I was living in Knoxville, and then I worked with my brother the other 3 days in his hockey hockey team up there as a marketing salesman. I was considering maybe easing away from the business, and I got a call from Sid, and he said he was going into WCW, and he said, I'd like to take you in with me as a colonel. White suit, white hat, cigar, all the stuff. And he says, how do you feel? I said, man, great. We'll get a contract and go with it. And so it was his idea, and I went in with him, and really got kicked off really, really good in there. And then Sid had his problems that he had with Arn, that some bad actions that he did over in England. And
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it cost him his job, and I lost Sid. And I was concerned because I was only with Sid in there for about 6 months, and Sid lost the job, and I was concerned that that they would shorten my contract. And then Eric Bischoff called me there at CNN building doing interviews on a Tuesday, and he said, hey, you're not thinking about leaving me, are you? And I was very glad to hear that. I was like, no. He said, I didn't know. He said, Sid said that you'd be going with him if we fired him, and I said, oh no. I said, no, I'm going to be staying with you. And so then they started that angle where I was going to split up the Hollywood Blondes and go with Steve Austin, and which was a great angle that we did. And I wound up with Flying Brian doing the chicken match and all. It was the highest rating that WCW had the night that I put on the chicken suit. We really did some crazy stuff in there, and with working with Steve was terrific. I had worked with him as a wrestler for Jarrett in Tennessee, and then there we were back working as a team, with me doing the management for him. And that was kind of crazy because Steve does a real good interview, and for some reason or other they wanted to talk her. So I was like, good gosh, I can't imagine that. So I'd want to say something to Steve. Hey, Steve, why don't you go ahead and just jump in here? He'd say, oh, no, you're the manager. You do the talking. Well, okay, but that was keeping a guy quiet that really could do his own business well. So, but Steve, he respected the fact that they put me in to manage, and he said, that's why you're here, and so let's do a good job with it.
John and I are two nobodies that you've never heard of.
But I want to be somebody.
Well, we are gaining steam. Why don't you tell them how?
Well, we signed up with Buzzsprout. With Buzzsprout, you can create your own podcast. And that means anybody can do a podcast.
All you need is a decent microphone, a computer, and a quiet room. I use an MSI Aegis computer with a K-Fine K690 microphone. All you need is an idea.
Anytime I ever had a question, I always emailed, and they always got back to me within the hour. Their amazing customer service will guide you through every step of the way.
Whether you don't know the difference between a wrist lock and a wristwatch, or you don't know the difference between a web browser and a web page like Johnny O over here, Buzzsprout will help you. With Buzzsprout, we're able to get our show on all the major podcast networks, including the one you're listening to right now. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. You'll get a great looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, and tools to promote your episodes, and much, much more.
And if you follow the link in the show notes, it lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you. So that will get you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan.
But seriously, guys, the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you and us succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Go to www.buzzsprout.com to learn more. All right, so I want to ask about the build-up to the Fall Brawl and the debut of the Shockmaster. So I want to know, how did you feel during this segment? But more importantly, how did you keep a straight face? Because even some of the boys lost it when Fred Ottman came out and fell right on his ass, lost his helmet, and then put it right back on. How were you feeling in that moment?
He was supposed to introduce him. He was going to explode through the wall, and he had that crazy Shockmaster mask on, but it wouldn't stay on his head good. It wasn't like a regular wrestling mask. It just fit down over the top of his head, and they had the wall all set up there. They had the 2x4 frame, and then they had this material that was it was a wood but very thin stuff, and he was just going to blast through that and onto the scene. And he caught his foot on the bottom 2x4 railing coming out, which tripped him. And so he didn't blast. He blasted through the wall, and then head first onto the floor. And when he did, his the mask Shockmaster, the thing on his head just flew off, just came off. And so he's trying to struggle his way up and get to the thing and put it back on his head. I know Dusty was the booker, and Dusty fell over in the floor laughing. And, and I thought, now here's a guy we're really depending on being able to make this work, and that he has just completely destroyed the character.
Right, yeah.
There's no way he can live through this, and so I didn't find it funny myself. I was kind of I felt sorry for him.
Right.
I'm like, good gosh, if I never saw a guy fall on his butt as fast as you did, just right off the bat, first night you're at the show, that bird just did not fly at all, and he was kin to Dusty somehow. He was married to a family member or something. They were kin people.
Yeah, I definitely remember Dusty Rhodes saying something to the effect of the kids called him Uncle Fred.
Yeah. They were kin. I don't know exactly what it was, but everybody knew. Well, this guy's coming in, and he's a family guy with Dusty, and they're going to put him right on, try to move him up as quickly as they can, and so a lot of people don't like that. They're like, well, because you're family member don't mean you just ought to come in and take somebody's spot. No, so when he fell on his butt, there might have been a lot of guys laughing. They just didn't have much sympathy, but I did, and I had the sympathy for the angle that we were trying to work. We might have seen some really big business out of him and Sid.
Right.
If all of that would have worked right, because Sid was a serious man. I mean, very, very serious about his look and his appeal in the ring. His interviews, that it was unlike working with Steve Austin. Working with Sid wanted to do a lot of his own talking, and he was right to, because that character that he was, that Sid Vicious type of character, he needed to explore that in his interview and let people see the real maniac that he was and all of this. And he could do a pretty good job of it, but he struggled with long interviews where he had to speak a minute and a half straight out, and that he'd mess up his stories. We'd go down to do interviews on Tuesday at CNN, and we'd be with Gene Okerlund, and where we should be there an hour and a half, we're an hour and a half, and we don't have half our stuff done. And Gene Okerlund would say to him, he'd say, hey, Sid, why don't you let Rob pick it up? And oh gosh, Sid, I'd want to get Gene and shake him and say, hey, don't say that. Don't say that. You get the heat on me, that Sid's serious about what he's doing, and if he's struggling, then he wouldn't like hearing that. So anyway, and then Sid would say, yeah, that's what you're the manager, why don't you go ahead and do it? And then I would knock out the interviews in 20 minutes and we'd go home.
Right.
That's being prepared and also being capable of doing it. I had been booker and a territory owner for 10 years in Alabama, and I handle all guys' interviews, everybody. So and my biggest thing was to get my guys to understand what they were doing, who they were talking about, and how they were going to go from week to week to week and progressing in this angle. And then they're ready for it. When they get there to the interview, I've got them ready. I've got them 3-4 weeks ahead in what they're doing, and so they're up on this week as they get to it. And you get guys used to that, where they can work on their material. But if you don't tell somebody what they're doing well ahead of time, it's difficult for them. But if you do, they can get an idea of where they're going next week, the week after, and then that first week is not so hard. They know, we're beginning on something that's really going to be great here, and you start selling it.
When you were in WCW, were you still wrestling independently? Did they allow you to still wrestle? Because I know you wrestled a handful of matches in WCW, but did they still allow you to wrestle outside of WCW?
You know what? I never needed to. I never would have. I didn't want to. I really got absorbed into that Colonel Parker image, and they really used it well. They treated me real well. I just loved Eric Bischoff, and those people were great. And they put me in some really good positions where making my interviews were easy. They were easy for me, but they were very important because my guys were going to be main events, semifinals, right up to pay-views and everything. And it was an important position, and I really enjoyed it. And so, no, I wouldn't have even been thinking about working for anybody else at that time. I spent 5 real good years in there, and that was a good run.
Right. Hey, it was my favorite. It was the one where I really got to know you on TV and really loved your character. I was a real big fan of it. So you ended up finally forming the stud stable in WCW. Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater, Terry Funk, Arn Anderson, and Ming. I think Terry Funk, when he left, I think Dirty Dick Slater took his place.
Right.
Was it WCW was still pushing for you to have the stud stable, or is that something you came up with yourself that you wanted to do in WCW?
No, they craziest thing that back in the 80s, when I was working with Jeff, or might have even been earlier than that. I spent a lot of time in Memphis in that area. That Eric Bischoff was a cameraman at the TV station where we were shooting the TV. He told me about that one time. He said, I've known you for a long time, and so he had great respect for me in that area. So Eric and I were very close, and it was easy to just fall into any spot that they put me in, because I was always elated about everything that WCW gave me. When they came to me with Ming, here's Haku Tonga, that's the baddest son of a gun in all the world. I mean, nobody in this world would want to try to fool with him. And they come and say, well, here's this guy, he's going to wear a black suit and black sunglasses and follow you around for the next couple of years. And I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I said, so I'm traveling with Ming, and he's the nicest, and he and I are like brothers. That I just love this guy. And so I had 2 years or a little more that I just I was the luckiest man in the world. That I traveled around with one of the dearest friends, and it became that way. And we were inseparable, always together. And today, he lives in Orlando. I'm over here. I see him all the time. He's one of my greatest friends on the face of the earth. But just bringing him in, because the idea when they brought him in, he was going to be my bodyguard, and then slowly over a year and a half, they were going to start to work him to the ring because of things that were making him mad, because of him getting more aggressive took me and they looked at where I was and went, oh, no, we want Jimmy Hart there, and we want different people here, So the office just started to change, and they took Ming away from me and gave him to, was it Jimmy Hart or Kevin Sullivan?
Well, it was both of them. It was
was
Dungeon of Doom, right? They're both of them were managing them.
Right. The Dungeons of Doom, and so they fit a barbarian in with his cousin Ming, and they had us working in pay-per-view in Huntington, California, and United States Championship. And before the office changed, Ming was going to win the United States Championship against Sting, and we were going to go on then to defend that, and Ming was going to be a top heel card for him. But then the office made a change, and at that point, then they decided that Ming was just going to put Sting over right in the middle with the splash and the Sting splash in the corner, and it just, it was like 2 years of hard work that just went down the drain one night. And, that's when they came to me in WCW and asked me to start wearing colored suits. They said go to a gray or a brown or something that the white suit is out. And I was wondering, why would you do that? Why would the white suit be out?
Yeah.
And so I didn't react to it very quickly, and then the office finally got with me, and they said, listen, when you're at TV next week, we want you in a gray suit. So the Colonel Parker started to change in there, and later on I wound up with Ruscio and his partner Pierre as the Quebecers, and they came in, and I wound up in a Foreign Legion outfit.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. The amazing French Canadians. Yeah.
But before I finally went out of there, that was the deal that Eric had come to me and talked to me and said, we want to put you in a Foreign Legion outfit. I laughed it off. I was like, that's a funny thing, it's like a joke to me. And I didn't hear any more about it for like 4 weeks, and we're at TV in Orlando. We did a lot of 5 days of TV, and we're 3 days into TV, and Eric comes in, he calls me in, he says, hey, what about the Foreign Legion outfit? And I just laughed again. I said, I thought you were kidding. He said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, I'll tell you, I'm kidding. This is a Thursday, and he said, you forget the TVs today, forget the TVs tomorrow, go home right now to Atlanta, and you're on Monday Night Nitro, and if you don't have that Foreign Legion outfit together, then don't come. And I was like, good gosh, where am I going to get a Foreign Legion outfit in 3-4 days?
That's what I want to know.
I'm a big guy. I can't go to a costume shop and get that. It's impossible. But I went and I got these designers and I got these people together, and I did it. Monday night I was at Nitro, and I was Colonel Parker. I was a French dead gum. I was a colonel. I was no longer
the colonel.
I was a colonel. Yes, that's the way it was. And so I said, hey, I said, it works for me anyway. I'm a lover. It's okay. Sherry and all the stuff they had me doing, and at that time, then I was working in Angle with Medusa. Yeah, there was a lot. I wrestled Medusa all around in the WCW. You know that?
Yeah, I did remember you had a little feud with Medusa. I remember that. But I didn't know you had a lot of. You had many matches with her.
I did a pay-per-view with her.
Yeah.
Gosh, I just love her. She's the sweetest thing.
She's a great wrestler.
Yeah, but back when I first met her, when she first came into WCW, and they decided to do this deal with us, we had a thing there. It was with Buck and Dick, and Sherry had messed up my marriage and the big fight there at the marriage, and TV and make this interview with Buck and Dick, and I say, listen, boys, I'm going to tell you, from here on out, I'm all business. No more women for me. That I know the straight road, and the straight road's taking you boys to the title, and all I'm ever going to do is concentrate on that and all this stuff. And then they had this spot where she was, Medusa was going to be in a miniskirt and a little skimpy top, and she was going to pop out of the curtain. And oh, Colonel. And oh, gosh, they do that spot, and I grab the boys, and I shove them both back behind me. I say, watch out, boys, it's my fried pie. I go right from this interview of I'm never going to have another woman take it, never to like the cartoon where the eyeballs fly way out of my head. And then I see this woman and I go crazy. I'm just madly in love. And she winds up saying, oh, Colonel, shut your eyes. And I got a big surprise. And I puck her up with a kiss and she knocks my brains out. And anyway, then we wind up going around and working in all the shows. And first show we go to Tupelo and we work a pay-per-view. And she dives off the top rope onto me on the concrete floor, and I catch her. If I don't, she dies.
Right. You better catch her.
I gotta catch her, and then she gets up, and then she literally kicks the hell out of me. I mean, hard as she can, like karate kicks, and hard as she can, just whap, whap, whap everything, and I say, good Lord, my daddy's never beat me like that. Yeah, so I go back to the dressing room. I'm not going to say anything about it. I just say, oh, it's all right, So I know I've got like 15 shows that I'm going to go and work with her all around the country, just regular house shows, and so I know it. So we go to the next show, and I say, okay, and I go in, I talk with her, and I say, listen, I want to do a few things with you. I want to get some heat, and she says, okay, and I say, I want to slam you, and she goes, okay, and I said, and I want to give you a suplex, and she goes, okay, oh, fine. I say, okay, fine, because she's kicking me hard as she can, and all this stuff. We got these spots that are very dangerous. I have to catch her. I have to deal with it, and so I go in. I slam the crap out of her. I slam her 2 or 3 times. Wham! Just up, back, right down, boom, boy. And I grab her up in the side and the head, and I jack her up straight and suplex her and the whole deal. And so the next night comes. We go out, and she comes and she says, Colonel, can I talk to you? I say, yeah, sure. So we want to kind of do the same thing. She said, oh, God, could we leave that suplex out? I say, yeah, sure we can. It won't hurt you? No, I just don't. That's kind of hard for me. And I said, okay, so then the kicks start getting real light and nice. And so we go out, and, boy, we start having great matches. I mean, we just, for a guy working with a girl, but for my character, the old man Colonel guy, and her being the world champion woman thing, it was just perfect. I mean, we could go out and we really entertain the crowd. So I had many matches with her, and I was glad that it turned out that way. If Sherry had have stayed there, I was going to be working with Sherry, and I would have preferred Medusa.
Speaking of Sister Sherry, I want to talk about your time with her in the Harlem Heat. When you worked with them, did you have any inkling that Booker T was going to be the breakout star that he was? Or was that something that manifested over time, do you think?
Yeah. They also went into WCW, started the same night that I did. Sid got them their job, the same as he did for me. They came in there the first night they were there. He had them as convicts named Cain and Abel, and they were to go to the ring with chains because they had been in jail with chains on and all of this stuff, and so I was going to manage them, and I was just doing what I was told. Sid had set this angle up, and I was going to be managing them and managing Sid, and they were going to be 2 guys that just got out of jail boy, we walked out that curtain, and they opened up, the fog came out, and I walk out of there with these two black guys and chains around their neck and stuff, and the guys in the office went nuts. We almost lost our job.
Oh my God.
They were considering firing us all the first night because they saw a colonel walk out with these two black guys in the chains, and they thought of slave, different type of deal, and it was awful. And so Sid had to apologize like crazy for all guys thing. So they went right. They just said, we got to have new names, this Cain and Abel, all this stuff don't work. And so they laid them right there in this Booker T and Stevie Ray, which is their real names, as the Harlem Heat. That's what happened. That's the way they got that Harlem Heat angle, and it became the Harlem Heat. And then they brought Sherry in to be with them, and it fired them right off. So
they didn't go over it with the office, like the idea of coming out with the chains and stuff like that. Like there was no somebody checking it over to make sure that it was approved.
You know what? I guess they didn't pay the proper attention to it. We didn't do any interviews before the match, and we didn't. And I don't know how that didn't get squashed before it ever got there, but it didn't. And they really had very high regard for Sid. And so if Sid sold them the angle of Cain and Abel, the prison guys and all, that they probably didn't want to mess with it, because Sid was a guy that got unhappy very quickly. And so they were really, really into Sid, and they wanted, and so that's the only thing that I can think. But when the hierarchy there of Turner Broadcasting, that was the people that just screamed. They just said, "Oh gosh!" And so I was on the edge of my seat there for a while of whether there was even going to be a Colonel Parker, and then they just, like I said, they went on with the Harlem Heat, different name, different idea, brought Sherry in, and all of it just went the way it went. But I know I always knew that even I knew those guys when they worked in Texas, and they were good talent, and that's what Sid saw. Sid saw that in them, and he said, "Heck, when I'm going to Atlanta, I want to take them with me." And the same thing he did with them, he did with me. And so we all went in together. And every time that I see Booker T, we always get a big laugh out of that.
Oh, good, good.
Booker T, I say, God, no, brother, we was fired the first night. He's like, oh, God, yeah, we always get a big laugh out of it. No, I love those guys. They're really, really good guys. And, we had a wonderful relationship. And the whole time that I was in Atlanta, they were there. So we were very close. Heck, you know how you are in this business. You see the guys more than you do your wife.
Yep.
So
you're running WCW before we talk about your release? Did you hang out with Harlem Heat outside of go to the bar or hang out with Ric Flair and party with him? Or?
I did with Rick, because Rick and I were very close. Rick worked as world's champion in Alabama for us, I knew Rick. I worked with him many times. Me and Rick worked world title matches at different places, and hard worker and a fabulous guy in the ring, and a really dear friend. That part of the time that I was Colonel Parker in WCW, Rick was the booker.
Yep.
And during that time that Rick was the booker, that's when they brought in Ming to be with me as a bodyguard. And then that was Rick's idea that we would spend all this time developing Ming as this secret service killer that's protecting me. And then we're going to finally put him in the ring. That was all Rick's idea. And then when the office changed and it kind of went from Rick to Hogan, then all of that changed. And it's just the way the business does sometimes. And we were caught in the middle of it.
Double Axe Handle Smash podcast would like to thank rubhouse.com for becoming one of our sponsors.
If you love to cook, Rub House goes out of their way to get the finest ingredients on earth to bring you rubs and spice blends that will make that meal dynamite.
So go to rubhouse.com and you will thank us later.
Check them out. So let's talk about the departure in 1997 from World Championship Wrestling. Now, were you released or did you ask for your release? Was there any animosity or bad blood? Can you please explain to us and our listeners what went down with your release in 1997?
What had happened is I was currently Parker, a French, and I was painting a little French mustache on my face. I was wearing a Foreign Legion outfit to the ring. To me, it was like belittling my character about as far as you could go without giving me a notice. But I'll tell you what, I was determined to do the best job out of it. I was determined to be a colonel who wanted to be a Frenchman.
Yep, and you wanted to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, right?
Exactly. Lemonade out of lemons. There you go. That I was determined to make the thing work. And Jock Ruscio, I think a lot of Jock. I really like him, and I always have. I used him in Alabama as many years as one of my top baby faces. And but he has a demeanor about him in the office. Sometimes it's difficult. He didn't like the idea that we were in an angle with the Harlem Heat, and we were putting him over every night. And he didn't like that. Now, I talked to Jock, I talked to Pierre, and Pierre was easy to talk to, but Jock more difficult. And I told Jock, what are you making on your contract? And he'd tell me, I'd say it's an enormous amount of money. And so why don't you go put the guys over and be quiet about it? But he's like, oh, no, I've never treated, I don't like to disrespect and all this. Hey, bud, wise up, get with the business. You've been around a long time. You should have figured it out. That they got big plans for these guys. I don't know what the plans are for you and Pierre, but your contract is a 3-year contract, and it's enormous. So shut up. And it came right down to near the end there. We were in the United Center there in Chicago for some big show, and we were against the Harlem Heat, and they were going to put the Harlem Heat over, and I knew it. And so we had our meeting, and I told Jock, because I had heard scuttlebutt through the office that there was an immense amount of heat with him and Eric Bischoff. Eric was mad at him. And so I talked to him. I took those guys up on the top of the United Center, and I told him, I said, Jock, listen, tonight is a pivot in your career in WCW. That if I have a feeling that if you give them problems tonight, that you might lose your contract. Oh no, he went no. And then Pierre said, hey, listen to him. Carl's been around many years. He knows what he's talking about, and I do. And I said, you got to promise me that you won't go in and talk to the office. They had already given us our finish. Jock didn't like it. I said, we'll do it. And promise me that you won't go talk to anybody. You'll leave it alone tonight. And Pierre said, promise him, Jock. Promise him, So Jock said, well, okay. I said, give me your word that you won't do it. I said, no, I won't do it. And then later, an hour later, I'm looking for Jock. I can't find him. And I find out he's in discussion with the guys in the office. Oh, gosh. And so I went home, and 2 weeks later, I get a 3 months notice thing in the mail. And Jock and those guys, they get it 4 weeks. So they let them go quickly, and they kept me there 3 more months, and during that 3 months, I didn't work. Because the only guys I was managing then was Jock and Pierre, and so when Jock and Pierre left, I was just being a guy to work with his kids in the school on their interviews, and he really liked it. He said, "Oh gosh, I really like that. You'd be great for that. I'd set up a little interview school there to help the guys, and all of them struggle with their interviews, and so he was going somewhere. He was out of the country for a while, and he said, when I get back, then I'll set up a deal and we'll talk about it. We never did. I moved on down here to Florida. I got a call right away from Bruce Pritchard, and they were interested in me coming in with Jeff and doing the Tennessee League. And so, I said, yeah, man, that's great. And, I'll jump back on the road. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. That's one of my favorite times too. It was a big surprise to me because even in 1998 when you debuted, they didn't have the dirt sheets on the internet as much as they are now. So nothing was really spoiled as much as it is now. So when you made your debut, I remember you came out to the ring, and I was at home. I popped for you when you came out, and you're like, and now the world's greatest singer, the world's greatest entertainer, and certainly the world's greatest wrestler, it's Double J, Jeff Jarrett. And he came out on a white horse, and it just brought chills. I was so excited and happy. That was a horrible impersonation of you. I'm sorry, sir, but
that's all right. But you pretty well had it. But that Vince, those guys, they would spare no expense. They have a horse trailer will follow Jeff and I around all across the country, and that's you're not going to fly the horse. Somebody's got to get in the truck and drive the horse and be in California one day, and the next day be in Tucson, Arizona, and the next day be in Dallas, Texas, and so so they put a lot in it, and I really enjoyed working there. And also working with Jeff, I really liked making the trips with Jeff. God knows he was wonderful. He put up with me. He drove all the time. He told me when I went in there, he called me to talk to me about going in. He actually had written up this storyline, and they had you do that in World Wrestling Federation. Guys had to be on top of their character, so they had to send in all this information on how they could better themselves, and constantly sending them ideas. And so one of his ideas was Tennessee League. And so it's funny how these things, you help a guy out, and then it comes back to you. And that happened to me several times in this business. And that was another time that took place. That when I went in there, I spent roughly 6 months with Jeff, and Vince come to talk to me in the garden about going in the office, and he meant for me to go in the office, and I was going to be honest with you, I was pretty burnt out with so much of the road that I lived down here in Florida, and I enjoyed getting off the road and coming home, and I've been in the business for a long time, and God's been good to me, and I don't worry much about the money, and so I had the craziest conversation with Vince that a person ever had in life. Vince, he said, "Oh, we're thinking about you want to bring in the office and pick your brain, some and this and that." And I said, "Well, Vince," I don't, I'm not up with the times a lot. I don't have a computer, or I don't have a computer. So I don't even use a telephone that does all that stuff. I have a little flip telephone. All it does is make phone calls." And Vince said, he said, "Well, you don't worry about that." He said, "We'll get you a laptop." And I just seized the moment. I looked at his face, and I told him I already have a guitar. And he just looked at me like, "What the friggin' heck are you talking about?" A flat top You know,
Flat top.
a flat top. You know, a guitar. You're not getting it. You know, it's like, oh God, you know, country ass son of a gun. New York here. You know, I don't give a shit about New York. What the hell? Is, you know, to be honest with you, pretty well had it with all that stuff, and so they were ready to make that woman move. They were going to really start using the women in WWE, WWF. They were going to start on this woman deal, and so they wanted to bring the girl in with Jeff, and so so they set it up for me to be in the office and the whole deal. And I worked for them. They paid me for 3 months' time that I didn't work, and they just said, well, you know, you got to come and talk to us in the office. You got to come in. And I'd say, okay, well, not now. You know, I'm having a relaxed time in Florida. And they'd go, well, take another couple of weeks and think about it, and then we're going to. And they kept doing this and doing it and doing it and doing it, and I never gave them an answer. And finally, they sent me my walking papers. And I wasn't upset about it at all because I knew. I was thinking, well, why do these guys keep paying me? That you know, I'm done. You know, I'm not gonna go work in their office. I'm just not gonna do it.
Is that the last time you guys did anything together?
Yes, it is. I've done some stuff for them. You know, I was you know, I allowed them to use my personal one of these computer games. The games there with me in Austin. They wanted to use me on one of those deals, and they paid me well for it. And of course, I still get their royalties and the stuff. But
nice.
I don't. So, and they're always very fair. You know, they're great people. They were different from WCW. I was elated to work for them. At WCW, I had a contract, and it was a good one, but it's all I made. That was it. And you know, and working for Vince, you know, I went in there and I had my contract, and then they paid me per show. They paid me per TV. They paid me per pay-per-view. You know, when I first signed my contract, I didn't realize that. I was thinking that, you know, I'm very satisfied with the contract. I thought it was more or less like WCW, and then I realized that oh no, your first night at TV there, they owe you this much money, and it was enormous, and so I was elated. I was just like, good Lord, I'm getting 2-3 checks every couple of weeks in the mail, and you know, I'm really doing well here. So I was very thankful to Jeff for that spot and all of that. But when I realized that I wouldn't be working with Jeff, and I would be going into the office, which would mean that I would not only make every show as an agent or the office employee, but I would be at their office. I would have to move to Connecticut and all of that. And I sat back and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I think I've had it. I think that's it.
Well, Johnny O can tell you that was a smart move, not moving to Connecticut.
You know what?
I live in Connecticut.
I've never had any regrets about it. I've never had any regret that I didn't. I've been around long enough that it doesn't make me feel honored past anything to be the boss, or to tell guys what to do, or to be a big person in the office. And those days were gone for me. And I just said, you know what, and then I enjoyed the rare show where I just go to Dothan, Alabama to be at a Continental Wrestling reunion or this deal or that deal, and I do those, and I have a ton of fun with it, and I still make a good dollar off of it, and I never regret not going into that office, because I'm not sure I would have done them a good job. I'm really not. I don't know. My heart might not have been in it, and I might not have gone and work like I was used to working in the business, and I didn't want to end up in this business working for Vince and those guys up in Connecticut and being a failure. I didn't, I just didn't see myself as finishing my career like that, and so I'm happy. I'm a happy guy. I'm where I want to be.
Well, I'd love to see you in the Hall of Fame at some point.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. There's several Hall of Fames.
Right. I understand.
That I am in, and I cherish Gulf Coast Wrestling Hall of Fame. And my father started the Gulf Coast Wrestling back in 1956, and there's things like that mean as much to me, and to some other people, and but I look at things and differently, and I say, listen, I've got several from this business and that business and this business, the Hall of Fame little things hanging on the wall, and it is what it is. I mean, you have your career, and you feel like you put a lot in it, and got a lot out of it, and I just have to say, I say it all the time. I like that old George Strait song, "My Life's Been Grand." I said, man, my funeral play that, because it has been that I have been gifted with the life. I couldn't have written it for myself any better, and it's really been great, and my life's surely been grand, and I've had the good Lord looking over me, and we all need that.
We sure do. Well said, sir.
Yes, sir.
John, every time we have a rapid fire smash segment, I've noticed you've asked people what their favorite pizza is. What is your favorite pizza?
Dude, it's the All-American Cheeseburger Pizza down at Gio's Pizzeria and Lounge.
Wow, that sounds interesting. What's on it?
Hamburg, bacon, mayonnaise, ketchup, mustard, pickles, red onions, and American cheese. It's great.
They don't just have pizza there, do they?
No, actually, they have a variety of Italian dinners, wings. They have a lot of gourmet grinders, just like their gourmet pizzas. My wife personally likes the red, white, and blue. It's a perfectly seasoned steak, mozzarella cheese, blue cheese crumbles, and red roasted peppers.
Dude, I'm looking at the website right now, and I am salivating. Gio'sPizzeria.com. Check it out. What else do they have there?
They actually have a full liquor bar.
Wow. Hey, if you're in the area, why don't you check them out? They're on 9 Allen Street in Hamden, Massachusetts. You want to order? 413-566-8015. Again, 413-566-8015. Not only can you dine in and have a drink, but they also deliver to the surrounding areas. So visit them today, www.giospizzeria.com. Gio's Pizzeria, it's the official sponsor of Double Axe Handle Smash podcast. Well, Col Rob, as our listeners come to know, we love a good rib story. So do you have any rib stories to share with us?
Oh, my. I probably have 1,000 of them. You just hit me off the top of my head, and I'm trying to think of something here that'd be, oh, gosh.
But we do one now, if you can think of something, and then we'll have you on again in the future, if you're willing to come on again. And we'll have a story, a thing about ribs, and a couple other things that we would like to hear about, but we don't have time for today.
Have you guys heard any things about me?
I haven't heard anything about you.
A lot of people know a lot of things about me that are a rib anyway.
Are these almost like a Ric Flair kind of story
in my life? I'll give you a story. It's not much of a rib, but this is a great story that we got Andre working for us in our territory in Alabama, and we're working in Montgomery, Alabama on a Sunday afternoon, 3:00 show, and we do the show, and the show's over at 6:00, and we're heading back to Pensacola. It's about a 165-mile ride, and Andre's riding in my Continental in the car with me, and he says, "Okay, where do we get the beer?" And I say, "Andre, you're in Alabama. They don't sell beer on Sunday." He's like, "Oh no." I say, "Yeah, you can't. I should have told you can't get beer in Alabama on Sunday. I should have brought some beer or done something." Oh gosh. So we stop heading out of town at 7-Eleven, and I go was going by the counter, and I run over there, and the girl says, "Hey, sir," she says, you can't take that beer. We don't sell beer on Sunday in Alabama. We don't have." And he said, "I'm not buying." And he just kicked the door open and just walked out with that gum beer. Oh gosh! And I look at the girl. And I say, "Oh my God!" I tell her, "He's a Frenchman. He doesn't understand. I can't explain it. We can't explain it." I took a $50 bill out and put it on his thing there, and I said, "Please." I called the police on him. I said, "Because and I said, and by the way, he can kill all of us."
Who wants to piss off a giant?
Yeah, he'll do us all in. And I go get in the car. I'm like, "Andre, gosh, he's like, yeah, I'm drinking the beer. Did you pay for the beer?" I think we'll get at least 2-3 miles down the road.
Oh my God!
Before they pull us over and stop us. So it's just, oh gosh, we never hear anything from it. But oh gosh, that was a story about him that I always remember, and it makes me laugh. It's just like, oh gosh, the lady said, "I'm not buying."
That's great. That's a great impersonation.
The damn beer. Oh my God.
We like to end the podcast with what we call rapid fire smash, which is basically some random questions. You can pick as many answers as possible, but before I do this, I want one more story if you have time for. I want to know, because I'm a big Haku fan. Have you ever seen this guy in action? I mean, I've heard of this guy at legendary bar fights, or this guy is taking people's eyes out. So you have a Haku story?
I've gone to and I hate to say this for him because he might take it personal, but I've gotten him out of jail. I've gone and paid his bail and got him out of jail. Boy, he paid me back for the bail and stuff like that. But he when he worked with me, he likes Jack Daniels, but he didn't drink it. He had made a promise to his wife, and he didn't drink it. But all of the few nights that he did, it generally turned out bad. So I see why he didn't drink it, but I have been in a bar with him where he saw choke somebody out.
Yep.
Me and Rick, bartender or bar not maiden, but he's a guy, came in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was closing time. And so they didn't serve any more drinks, but now they're to the point where they want us to leave and the whole thing. So they come over, and Haku's talking to Rick, and I'm standing there with him, and he's had his Jack Daniels, but he's not done with it. And the guy says, "I have to take your drink," and he says, "No, I'm not quite done the whole thing." And he keeps talking to Rick. He's not paying any attention. And the guy's like, "I have to take it." And he reaches and he gets the drink. And boy, when he does, just throttles him in the throat. And he's got him, and he's passing out. And matter of fact, he did pass out, but he's passing. He's in the process of passing out. And me and Rick are saying to him, "Let him go. Let him go." And he's saying, yes, let him go. Yeah. But he's not doing it. We're saying, "No, let him go." And he's unconscious, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to let him go. "God dang it." We say, "Let him go." So, and he lets him go, and Rick says, "Get him out of here." And we get down to not even a block, hardly down the street, and here comes a cop car by one way, and then another car comes in. They go on each side of us, and 4 cops get out, and they're going to arrest him, and he's not going to be arrested.
Oh my God.
He's not going. Yeah, he's not going to be arrested. He's not going to put on handcuffs, and he's not going to be arrested. And I'm trying to reason to say, now, listen, you're going to have to be. No, I'm not going to put on the handcuffs. And the guys on the cop says, we're going to put the handcuffs on him. And he's going, no, I won't put on the handcuffs. I won't do it. And I'm telling you, they're going to shoot us. Because as soon as you throttle one of these cops by the throat, then, they're going to shoot us. So, that ain't going to do us any good. And so it was, I've had some real situations. And then I've gone afterwards, I get him out of jail, I go to the Waffle House, he's sitting there, we're 4 o'clock in the morning in the Waffle House, and then he's a big 350-pound Samoan sitting there crying. Oh, my wife is going to kill me. Everybody's, in the Waffle House, they're looking, going, gosh, this guy's over there. And he said, calm down, man. It's okay. She's not going to even know, She's never going to know. Oh, she'll know. I got to tell you one more story, guys.
Sure.
This one's really funny. We worked at Hell in the Cell with Dusty Rhodes and Nasty Boys against my guys. I think it was Terry Funk and Jimmy as a bunkhouse buck and somebody. And the deal is, if they beat all 3 of my guys, I have to go into the cage. And on the end. So on the end, the finish is, they're going to beat all my guys, and I wind up going in. Dusty puts a figure 4 on me, and the Nasty Boys drop the elbows on me until I'm unconscious. They just murder me. And so Ming's on the outside of the cage, and the whole cage is shaking. He's hanging on there, and he's just rattling that whole dadgum thing while they're doing this to me. Because the Nasty Boys, when Dusty put the figure 4, I've got to lean forward because the pressure on my leg hurts. And I have to lean forward some, and they're dropping those elbows on me. They're both big guys, and they're dropping them heavy. And Ming knows it. He knows they're killing him. They're freaking killing him, and he don't like it. And the thing is over, and they go out, and Ming comes around. He comes in the door, and he comes up, and he picks me right up behind the head like a baby, and he raises me up, and his eyes are like 4 inches from mine. He's just looking me right in the face, and he's dead serious now. And he says, oh, Mr. Parker, are you okay? And I say, no, Ming, I shit my pants. He's a big dude, he's laughing, he goes, oh, he's gonna laugh, and I said, don't you laugh, you big thing, don't you laugh. You kill us all night, don't you laugh. He's trying to keep him laughing. How could you say that to me? I say, oh, no, Ming, I shit my pants. He's a funny guy, but we went back into the dressing room that if they followed with the cameras, and the deal was he went into their dressing room, and all of Dusty's in there, and the Nasty Boys, and they all came out bleeding.
Oh my God.
Everybody was bleeding when they came out the door, and I was like, whoa. And Ming was supposed to go in and tear the place apart and murder them all. And so, that was Rick's idea of how we get Ming over. And boy, did he do it. He took the camera in, and he all the kicks and the chops and the stuff and the things that he did he ripped the place apart, and they all came out bleeding. Everybody came out and they had blood on them somewhere, and I was just like, wow. Boy, they had a job on their butt, man. So, oh gosh, he was a great guy. You just never get a better one.
All right, so now we're going to get into the rapid fire smash. As John stated earlier, you can give a short answer, a long answer. John, why don't you go ahead and ask the first question?
What's your favorite meal?
Steak.
Okay. Favorite territory or company to work for?
Georgia Championship Wrestling.
What's your favorite version of the Stud Stable?
Different guys. What you want me to name different guys?
Yeah, name some guys.
Terry Funk, Bunkhouse Buck.
Favorite pizza toppings?
Everything except anchovies.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Yeah, depends on how many beers and smokes you had. Maybe so.
All right, what's the favorite match you've ever had?
Had a match with Terry Funk, and it was incredible. Yeah, I'll tell you about it.
Okay.
Do you have time?
Do you have time? We have plenty of time. I just want to make sure you have time.
Listen, when I tell you about this match, and maybe we'll shorten the other thing, but this is the way the business works. That we're having a tournament in Knoxville, Tennessee. We've got 3 former world champions in the tournament. My brother, we booked him to come back against Harley in the World Championship match. He's going to win the tournament. But I got a match there against Terry Funk. He's a former world champion. And so I get on TV and I make an interview, and I make a real serious interview that I don't promise things, but I'm going to promise you, the fans, and my brother, that Terry Funk will not beat me, that I will eliminate Terry Funk from this tournament so my brother doesn't have to wrestle him, and that I'll do it, and I'll do it or die. That I don't promise, but I'm going to make a promise, and that I never do. I will beat Terry Funk at the match. So I already knew when I get there I'm going to put him over. So we go, and we did the 20-minute matches, and so we do the 20 minutes Broadway, and then ask for 5 more minutes, and they decided we'll go 5 more minutes. So me and Terry, we go 4.5 of the 5 minutes. We got 30 seconds left, and Terry puts me in a Boston Crab, and I am exhausted. I mean, literally exhausted. And he's got me in that Boston Crab. I can't breathe. But the finish is that the referee's going to be right down looking me in the face, asking me, do I give up? And Terry is going to lean over to the corner with his head to get extra leverage so he can hurt me worse. And he's going to put so much pressure from leaning his head in that corner that I'm going to give up. And so I not only lose the match, but I give up. I give up. And I was doing the booking. This is my own thinking, but this is what happened. My brother's standing in the back, and he's watching. And this is the finish, that Terry beats me, and I tap out. And I roll over to Terry's leaving the ring, and I think maybe I'm having a heart attack. I'm exhausted to the point that I can't get my breath good, and I can't even raise up in the ring. I'm just dead. And I'm laying there, and the referee comes over, and he says, are you okay? You know, I said, I don't know if I'm okay. I can't get up. And he said, can you raise up? No, I can't. I don't have any strength to raise up, nothing. And my brother sees this from the back, and he says, something's wrong. I get cold chills right now thinking about it. And so he starts down to the ring. Now, we didn't plan any of this, and the house goes to a hush. You can hear a pin drop on the floor. And he makes his way down to the ring. He rolls in the ring. They want to hear what he says, so they be quiet. And he says, are you okay? And I say, I don't know, Ron. And he says, what's wrong? And I said, I don't know. He said, you having heart trouble or something? And I said, I don't know. I don't have any energy to raise up. And he said, oh, well, let me get under your shoulder. And he gets under me in the thing, and he sets me up, and the crowd's just quiet. You hear a pin drop, and it's a serious moment. They know it. They can see it. They can see it in me. They can see it in Ron and the referee and everybody. And it's such a serious moment. And then the referee gets under one arm, and Ron gets under an arm, and I say, just try to get me to my feet, see if I can stand. And they pick me up to my feet, and my brother takes my hand, he raises it, and friggin' roof came off the place. I mean, that there's never been anybody that ever worked the Coliseum or Col Rob Parker anywhere in Knoxville that was over like I was over. And I had just lost a match that I swore I'd win and gave up in it. I mean, that's as big a job as you can ever do. Because of the match and the way that Terry called the match and the hard work that we put into it, it was so believable and so just captivating to the audience that this finish and my brother coming out out, and everything, it just all fell together to be one of the greatest moments I've ever had in my life in the ring, because I just said, this is just a miracle that you can go out and do a job like this after promising otherwise and be the biggest thing on the card. It's incredible that the business can be like that, and it can.
How old were you at this time?
I was probably in my late 20s,
Yep.
28, 29 years old. And Terry's a young guy. I'm a young guy, but I had unreal respect for Terry. But I knew, like Ric Flair, same deal. I knew that you work with these guys, you're going to work hard. I mean, you don't have a picnic. You know, you could go out and work with some guys. You work with Harley as a world champion. Some guys, and they call that match smooth and nice, and you'd get done, and you'd say, boy, gosh, dog, that was a night off. Yeah. But when you work with Terry and Rick, you didn't get the night off. But it was you earned your money, and that's the way it ought to be. It's the way it ought to be. That guys you ought to come out of that ring totally exhausted every night after you work, and it ought to mean enough to you where you demand that from yourself. That there are no real easy matches. That you put everything you got into every night, and so there it is. But you asked me about the best match. That was it. Me and Terry fought. Yeah.
I really appreciate that story. I appreciate it.
Well, before we go, we've kind of been asking this as the last question to everybody. Do you watch the current product, like AEW, WWE, Impact, any of that? Do you watch any of today's product?
Only occasionally WWE.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I will. I don't by any means watch it regularly or anything, but I like some people, and I like some people on there's work. There's some people that I like to see. I'm not. Seth Rollins is not too bad, and John Cena certainly puts a hard night in, and there's some guys that I like to watch their wrestling. So, heck, I know that these guys are doing a lot of flip-flopping, a lot of stuff. They're not getting that reaction that me and Terry Funk got in Knoxville that night from the different type of work and the different type of response to stuff. But they're putting a lot into it. They're working hard. There's a lot of bumps, a lot of flip-flop, a lot of stuff. I look at it and say, well, I wouldn't do any of that way. But times have changed.
I want to thank Colonel Rob Parker for his time. Thank you so much. You've been a pleasure, my friend.
Tell you what, guys, I've enjoyed it.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell them who we got next?
Oh, next we have a very bad man.
Some would say he's even marvelous.
He is Marvelous Mark Marrow, a.k.a.
Johnny B. Bad.
Next time
on Double Axe Handle Smash Podcast.